Welcome to Present Poetry, a reading podcast with your host, Erin Crittenden. All poems used in this podcast are either public domain or used with permission from the author or the estate. So sit back, relax, and get ready to hear some poetry from the past and the present. Today, we are reading poems from Morrow Lindbergh. Morrow Lindbergh was born June 22, 1906, in Englewood, New Jersey. She graduated from Smith College in 1928 and received 2 literary awards, and then married her husband, famous aviator Charles Lindbergh, in 1929. In 1930, she becomes the first U.S. woman to get her glider's pilot license and is issued her private pilot's license in 1931. She then spends her time flying around the world with her husband, charting airlines, writing books, and caring for the couple's 6 children. Anne Lindbergh then passed away on February 7, 2001, at the age of 94. During her lifespan, she had 14 books published between the years of 1935 and 1980, and we will be reading poems from her book, The Unicorn and Other Poems, which was last published in 1956. Our first poem is titled The Man and the Child. It is the man in us who works, who earns his daily bread and anxious scans the evening skies to know tomorrow's plans. It is the man who hurries as he walks, finds courage in a crowd, shouts as he talks, who shuts his eyes and burrows through his task, who doubts his neighbor and who wears a mask, who moves in armor and who hides his tears. It is the man in us who fears. It is the child in us who plays, who sees no happiness beyond today's, who sings for joy, who wonders, and who weeps. It is the child in us at night who sleeps. It is the child who silent turns his face, open and maskless, naked of defense, simple with trust, distilled of all pretense, to sudden beauty in another's face. It is the child in us who loves. Our next poem is titled The Little Mermaid, based on the Hans Christian Andersen story. Only the little mermaid knows the price one pays for mortal love, what sacrifice, exacted by the sea witch, should one choose a mermaid's careless liberty to lose. Into the smoky cauldron she must throw a mermaid's kingdom gleaming far below. The restless waves and filtered light that falls through dim, pellucid depths on palace walls. All childhood haunts must go, all memories, her swaying garden of anemones, circled by conch shells where the sea fans dance to unheard music, bending in a trance. No longer she now seeks a mortal home, sharing with her sisters laughter light as foam. Those moon-bright nights alone upon the shore, singing a mermaid's song, are hers no more. The magic sweetness of a mermaid's song she must abandon if she would belong to mortal world, the gift, O fatal choice, that might have won the prince her golden voice. The mermaid's silver tail with which to dart from octopi, the mermaid's coral heart that felt no pain she now must do without, exchanged for mortal longing, mortal doubt. Our third poem is called Security. There is refuge in a seashell or a star, but in between, nowhere. There is peace in the immense or the small, between the two, not at all. The planet in the sky, the seashell on the ground, and though all heaven and earth between them lie, no peace is to be found elsewhere. O you who turn for refuge, learn from women who have always known the only roads that life has shown to be secure, how sure the path a needle follows, or a star, the near, the far. With what compare the light reflected from a thimble stare, unless on high Arcturus's eye? The near, the far, but in between, oh, where is comfort to be seen? There is refuge in a seashell or a star, but in between, nowhere. Our fourth poem is titled Broken Shell. Cease searching for that perfect shell, the whole, in violet form, no tooth of time has cracked. The alabaster armor still intact, from sand's erosion and the breaker's roll. What can we salvage from the ocean's strife, more lovely than these skeletons that lie, like scattered flowers open to the sky, yet not despoiled by their consent to life? The pattern on creation morning laid, by softened lips and hollow, unbetrayed, the gutted frame endures, a testament, even in fragment, to the first intent. Look at the spiral, stripped to polished nerve of growth, erect as a compass in its curve. It swings forever to the absolute, crying out beauty like a silver flute. Our final poem is the title poem of this book, The Unicorn in Captivity. Here sits the unicorn in captivity, his bright invulnerability captive at last, the chase long past, winded and spent by the king's spear's rent, collared and tied to a pomegranate tree. Here sits the unicorn in captivity, yet free. Here sits the unicorn, his overtakelessness bound by a circle small as a maid's embrace, ringed by a round corral, pinioned in place by a fence of scarlet rail, fragile as a king's crown, delicately laid down over horn, hoofs, and tail, as a butterfly net is lightly set. He could leap the corral if he rose to his full white height. He could splinter the fencing light with 3 blows of his porcelain hooves in flight, if he chose. He could shatter his prison wall, could escape them all, if he rose, if he chose. Here sits the unicorn. The wounds in his side still bleed from the huntsman's spears, yet he takes no heed of the blood-red tears on his milk-white hide that spring unsealed, like flowers that rise from the velvet field in which he lies. Dream wounds, dream ties, do not bind him there, in a kingdom where he is unaware of his wounds, of his snare. Here sits the unicorn, head in a collar cased, like a girdle laced round a maiden's waist, broidered and buckled wide, carelessly tied. He could slip his head from the jeweled noose, so lightly tied, if he tried. As a maid could loose the belt from her side, he could slip the bond, so lightly tied, if he tried. Here sits the unicorn, leashed by a chain of gold to the pomegranate tree, so light a chain to hold so fierce a beast, delicate as a cross at rest on a maiden's breast. He could snap the golden chain with one toss of his mane, if he chose to move, if he chose to prove his liberty. But he does not choose. What choice would lose? He stays, the unicorn, in captivity. In captivity, flank, hoofs, and mane, yet look again. His horn is free, rising above chain, fence, and tree. Free him of love, his horn bursts from his tranquil brow like a comet born, cleaves like a galley's prow unto seas untorn, springs like a lily white from the earth below, spirals a bird in flight to a longed-for height, or a fountain bright, spurting to light of early morn, O luminous horn. Here sits the unicorn, in captivity, in repose, forgotten now the blows, when the huntsmen rose with their spears, dread sounds of baying hounds with their cry for blood, and the answering flood in his veins for strife, or his rage for life, in hoofs that plunged, in horn that lunged, forgotten the strife. Now the need to kill has died like a fire, and the need to love has replaced desire. Forgotten now the pain of the wounds, the fence, the chain, where he sits so still, where he waits thy will. Quiet the unicorn, in contemplation stilled, with acceptance filled. Quiet save for his horn, alive in his horn, horizontally in captivity, perpendicularly free, as prisoners might, looking on high at night, from day-close discipline of walls and bars, to night-free infinity of sky and stars, find here felicity. So is he free, the unicorn. What is liberty? Here lives the unicorn, in captivity, free. Thank you for listening to this episode of Present Poetry. If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review, share us on social media, or subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you would like to learn more about the featured poet, or you would like your work featured on the podcast, please check out the links in the show notes. Thank you again for listening, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.